Marcus Chen had always prided himself on following directions. 23 years as a maintenance engineer aboard various space stations and diplomatic vessels had taught him that attention to detail kept people alive in the void between stars. But as he stood frozen in the doorway of what was clearly the most ornate bathing chamber he had ever seen, Marcus realized that sometimes even the most careful person could end up in the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. Steam rose from pools of water that glowed with an inner light, casting shifting patterns across walls that seemed to be carved from a single piece of midnight blue crystal. The air smelled of something between jasmine and ozone, and the gentle sound of flowing water created an almost hypnotic atmosphere. Marcus had been following the maintenance schematic on his tablet, tracking down a reported fluctuation in the atmospheric recycling system when he had taken what he thought was a service corridor and ended up here. The problem was not just that he was clearly in someone's private quarters. The problem was that someone was currently using the bathing chamber, and that someone was easily the most imposing alien he had ever encountered. The being in the central pool was tall, even while sitting, with skin that shifted between deep purple and silver, depending on how the light caught it. Her features were angular but elegant, with large eyes that reminded Marcus of polished obsidian. When she turned to look at him, those eyes held an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably ancient. She wore no clothing, but her bearing was so regal that Marcus felt like he was in the presence of royalty, even as his face burned with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," Marcus stammered, taking a step backward. "I was following the maintenance diagram and I must have taken a wrong turn. I'll just—" The alien raised one long-fingered hand, and Marcus found himself stopping mid-sentence. When she spoke, her voice had a musical quality that made the universal translator in his ear ring softly as it processed the words. "You are the human maintenance engineer," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am. Marcus Chen. I was tracking down an atmospheric issue and I got turned around in these corridors. I sincerely apologize for the intrusion." The alien studied him for a long moment. Marcus tried not to fidget under her gaze, but it was difficult. He had worked on diplomatic vessels before and had met dozens of alien species, but none had ever looked at him with such focused attention. It was like being examined by a scientist studying a particularly interesting specimen. "Tell me, Marcus Chen," she said finally, "what do you see when you look at me?" The question caught him off guard. "I'm sorry? What do you see? What does your human perception tell you about my current state?" Marcus glanced around the chamber again, taking in the pools, the flowing water, the gentle lighting. "You're bathing. You're trying to clean yourself and I've interrupted your privacy. I really should go." "Bathing." The alien repeated the word as if tasting it. "Yes, I suppose that is what your species would call it, but you are incorrect about one thing. I am not cleaning myself." She gestured to one of the smaller pools nearby, where Marcus noticed several implements laid out on the stone edge. Among them was what looked very much like a scrubbing brush, though it was clearly made from materials he did not recognize. "I am attempting to remove something that has proven quite stubborn," she continued. "Something that your atmospheric recycling system has been designed to handle, which is why I requested that a human engineer be sent to this section." Marcus felt his eyebrows rise. "You requested a maintenance engineer? But the work order said there was a fluctuation in the atmospheric system." "There was, because I instructed my attendants to create one." The alien rose from the pool with fluid grace, and Marcus quickly averted his eyes. When he looked back, she had moved to the edge of the chamber and was reaching for what looked like a robe made of the same crystal-like material as the walls. "I needed to speak with a human, and I needed that human to find me here, in this state. Your species has certain qualities that others lack, qualities that I require at this moment. I don't understand. The alien secured the robe around herself and turned to face him fully. My name is Viridian Ashtar, and I am what you would call the Queen of the Zephyrian Union. 3 days ago, my ship encountered a previously unknown form of energy that has contaminated my skin with microscopic organisms. These organisms are slowly poisoning me, and they have proven resistant to every method of removal that my people have attempted. Marcus felt his maintenance engineer's instincts kick in, despite the surreal nature of the conversation. What kind of organisms? Have you tried standard decontamination procedures? Multiple times. We have used chemical baths, energy fields, even surgical removal. Nothing works. The organisms seem to adapt to whatever method we use to attack them. My chief medical officer believes that I have perhaps 2 more days before the toxins overwhelm my system. But what does this have to do with me? I'm just a maintenance engineer. Queen Ashtar moved to the small pool and picked up the scrubbing brush. Tell me, Marcus Chen, how does your species clean things that are difficult to clean? Marcus thought about it. Well, it depends. Sometimes you need to use mechanical action, physical scrubbing. But if that doesn't work, you might need to change your approach entirely. Use different chemicals, different temperatures, different techniques. Yes, physical scrubbing. This is something my people do not do. We have evolved beyond such crude methods, or so we believed. Our bodies are delicate, our skin sensitive. The idea of using brute force to remove contamination is foreign to us. She held out the brush to him. But your species still understands this principle. Humans are willing to use what others might consider primitive methods if those methods achieve results. Marcus stared at the brush. You want me to scrub you? I want you to help me remove organisms that are killing me, using techniques that my people cannot bring themselves to employ. Your species has a saying, does it not? When all else fails, try elbow grease? But I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about alien biology or contamination protocols. You know how to clean things that others cannot clean. You understand that sometimes the simplest solution is the correct one, even when more sophisticated approaches fail. Marcus looked at the Queen, then at the brush, then back at the Queen. This is completely outside my area of expertise, and frankly, it seems like there should be protocols against this kind of thing. There are protocols, Queen Ashtar agreed. Protocols that have failed to save my life. I am dying, Marcus Chen. In approximately 48 hours, these organisms will have produced enough toxins to cause complete organ failure. My people's adherence to proper procedures will ensure that they die with me. Die with you? The Zephyrian Union consists of 700 worlds and nearly 1 trillion beings. Without my genetic signature to maintain the neural link that connects our civilization, our society will collapse into chaos. Wars will break out. Billions will die. She moved closer to him. I am not asking you to perform surgery or to cure a disease. I am asking you to help me scrub away microscopic parasites using physical force that my people are too refined to apply. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. He had signed up to fix atmospheric recyclers and maintain life support systems, not to potentially save entire civilizations by giving an alien queen a bath. But as he looked into Queen Ashtar's obsidian eyes, he could see something that transcended species. Desperation. If I do this, he said slowly, and something goes wrong, what happens to me? If something goes wrong, it will not matter what happens to you. The collapse of my civilization will create a power vacuum that will destabilize this entire sector of the galaxy. Your human colonies will not escape the resulting wars. Marcus picked up the brush and examined it. The bristles were firm but not harsh, made from what looked like synthetic fibers. Have you tested this approach at all? We ran simulations. The computer models suggest that controlled mechanical abrasion, applied with gradually increasing pressure, should disrupt the organism's ability to maintain their grip on my skin cells. But simulations are not the same as reality. And you can't just have one of your own people do this? My people are psychologically incapable of applying sufficient force. They become distressed at the thought of causing discomfort, even discomfort that might save a life. It is a weakness of our evolution. Marcus tested the weight of the brush in his hand. So you need someone crude enough to actually scrub when scrubbing is required. I need someone who understands that sometimes the primitive solution is the correct solution. Someone whose species has not evolved beyond the willingness to get their hands dirty. You make humans sound like barbarians. Queen Ashtar smiled for the first time since he had entered the chamber, and Marcus was surprised by how warm the expression looked on her alien features. I make humans sound practical. In this galaxy, that is a rare and valuable trait. Marcus looked around the chamber again, taking in the impossible luxury of the setting and the strange turn his routine maintenance call had taken. If I do this, I need to know exactly what these organisms look like and how they respond to different stimuli. I need to know what signs to watch for that indicate the treatment is working or that I should stop. And I need your word that if this goes badly, you won't hold me responsible. You have my word, and the word of the Zephyrian Union. You will be provided with all available data on the organisms. And Marcus Chen? Yes? If this works, the Zephyrian Union will remember that humanity saved us when our own sophistication could not. Marcus hefted the brush again and looked at the queen of one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, who was asking him to help her with a problem that boiled down to scrubbing harder than anyone had been willing to scrub before. All right, he said, but we're going to do this methodically. I want to start with the smallest affected area and work up gradually, and I want someone monitoring your vital signs the entire time. Of course. And afterwards, regardless of how this goes, I want a full report on these organisms sent to Earth's medical authorities. If humans are going to be cleaning up after problems that advanced civilizations can't solve, we need to know what we're dealing with. Queen Ashtar's smile widened. Already thinking like a practical human. Yes, all data will be shared with your people. Marcus nodded and moved toward the pool. Then let's see if human stubbornness is really the solution to your problem. As he knelt beside the glowing water, Marcus Chen realized that his maintenance career had just taken a turn that no amount of training could have prepared him for. But if there was one thing humans were good at, it was figuring out how to make things work, even when those things seemed impossible. He was about to find out if that reputation was deserved. The Zephyrian medical officer who arrived 10 minutes later looked like he had been personally insulted by the universe. His silver-blue skin had an almost translucent quality, and his movements were so precise they seemed choreographed. He introduced himself as Chief Medical Advisor Keth Ral, and his disapproval was obvious even through the Universal Translator's neutral tone. "Your Majesty," Keth Ral said, his large eyes fixed on Marcus, "I must protest this course of action. The barbarity of physical contact therapy has not been used in civilized medicine for over 3,000 years. Which is precisely why it might work," Queen Ashtar replied calmly. She had moved to a raised platform at the edge of the main pool, where monitoring equipment had been hastily assembled. "Your own reports indicate that the organisms have adapted to every sophisticated treatment we have attempted. Perhaps it is time to try something they cannot adapt to, because they have never encountered it before." Marcus finished reviewing the medical data on his tablet and looked up. The microscopic images were unlike anything in human experience. The organisms looked almost crystalline, with complex geometric structures that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. According to the reports, they had attached themselves to the queen's skin cells and were slowly releasing toxins while simultaneously creating new defensive adaptations every time a treatment was applied. "They're learning," Marcus said. Every time you hit them with something, they figure out how to resist it better the next time. It's like they're tiny computers constantly updating their software. Kethral's expression grew even more sour. A crude, but perhaps accurate analogy. Our scientists believe they are some form of biomechanical hybrid, possibly created as a weapon by an unknown civilization. But they're still attached to living tissue, Marcus continued, studying the data. Which means they probably can't adapt to purely physical disruption as easily as they can adapt to energy or chemical attacks. They would need to completely change their attachment mechanism, which might be harder than just building resistance to specific frequencies or compounds. Precisely our conclusion, Queen Ashtar said. But as I explained, my people cannot bring themselves to apply the necessary force. We are evolved for harmony, not conflict. Even conflict with microscopic parasites. Marcus looked at the scrubbing brush again. According to this data, the organisms are concentrated mainly on your back and shoulders, where you first made contact with the energy field. Is that right? Correct. The contamination has been spreading slowly, but those remain the most heavily affected areas. And the plan is to start there and work outward? That is what our models suggest would be most effective. Marcus nodded and moved toward the platform. Okay. But we're going to start very gently and work up to more pressure gradually. I want to see how they react before we commit to any particular approach. He knelt beside the platform, acutely aware that he was about to provide medical treatment to the ruler of an interstellar civilization using what amounted to a scrub brush. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on him, but he had learned long ago that sometimes the most absurd solutions were the ones that worked. Your Majesty, I'm going to start with very light pressure, just to see how the organisms respond. Let me know immediately if you feel any unusual sensations. Queen Ashtar nodded and leaned forward, allowing Marcus to see the affected area clearly. At first glance, her skin looked normal, but when he adjusted his tablet to use the medical scanner function, he could see thousands of tiny geometric shapes clinging to her skin cells like microscopic armor. Marcus dipped the brush in a bowl of sterile water and gently touched it to the edge of the contaminated area. The response was immediate and visible through the scanner. The organisms nearest to the brush began to pulse rapidly, their geometric shapes shifting and changing. They're definitely reacting, he said. Kethral, are you seeing this on your monitors? The medical advisor reluctantly moved closer. His scanner focused on the same area. Yes, the organisms are exhibiting rapid cellular activity. Their energy signatures are fluctuating. Marcus applied slightly more pressure and moved the brush in a small circle. Through the scanner, he could see some of the organisms beginning to lose their grip on the skin cells. It's working. They can't adapt quickly enough to maintain their hold while dealing with physical disruption. He continued the gentle scrubbing motion, gradually increasing the pressure as he gained confidence. The organisms were clearly struggling to maintain their attachment, and several had already been dislodged and were floating in the water. How does it feel? Marcus asked the Queen. Strange, she admitted. The physical sensation is foreign to me, but not unpleasant. More importantly, I can feel a difference in the affected area. The burning sensation that has been constant for 3 days is beginning to fade. Marcus smiled and continued working. This was exactly the kind of problem he was good at solving. Complex technology was failing, but simple mechanical action was succeeding. It was the maintenance engineer's eternal truth. Sometimes you needed to hit something with a wrench, even if that something was microscopic alien parasites. The key is not to give them time to adapt, he said, working steadily across the contaminated area. Every few minutes I'm going to change the pattern of movement, the pressure, even the angle of attack. Keep them guessing. Fascinating, Kethral murmured, his earlier disapproval giving way to scientific curiosity. The organisms are attempting to develop resistance. but the constantly changing stimulus is preventing them from establishing a stable defensive adaptation. Marcus had cleared approximately a quarter of the affected area when he noticed something concerning on the scanner. The organisms in other parts of the contaminated zone were beginning to pulse in unison, their geometric shapes becoming more complex. "They're communicating," he said. "Look at this pattern. They're sharing information about what we're doing." Queen Ashtar turned her head to look at the scanner display. "Can they develop a coordinated defense? Maybe. But they still have the same fundamental problem. They're trying to maintain a physical attachment while dealing with physical disruption. There are limits to how much they can adapt without completely changing their basic structure." Marcus changed his approach, switching from circular motions to long strokes along the grain of the queen's skin. The coordinated pulsing of the organisms faltered as they struggled to process the new stimulus. "Your Majesty," Kethral said, "the toxin levels in your bloodstream are beginning to decrease. The treatment appears to be working." "Of course it's working," Marcus said, switching back to circular motions just as the organisms began to adapt to the long strokes. "Humans have been scrubbing things clean since we lived in caves. We might not have fancy energy fields or nanomedical devices, but we understand that sometimes the old ways work best." He continued working for another hour, systematically clearing the contaminated areas while constantly varying his technique to prevent adaptation. The organisms fought back as best they could, developing new attachment strategies and attempting coordinated defensive responses, but they simply could not keep up with the constantly changing physical assault. "This is remarkable," Kethral said as he watched the toxin levels continue to drop. "In 1 hour of primitive physical therapy, you have accomplished more than 3 days of our most advanced medical treatment." "It's not primitive," Marcus corrected, pausing to examine his progress. "It's just different. You've been fighting these things with precision and sophistication, trying to outthink them. But sometimes you don't need to be smarter than your opponent. You just need to be more stubborn." Queen Ashtar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "More stubborn. Yes, that is a very human approach to problem solving." "Human engineers have a saying," Marcus said, resuming his work. "If it's not working, hit it harder. If it's still not working, get a bigger hammer. These organisms are sophisticated, but they're not any tougher than mineral buildup in a recycling filter. They just require the right kind of mechanical action." As the treatment continued, Marcus found himself settling into the rhythm of the work. This was familiar territory for him, even if the context was unlike anything he had experienced before. He was solving a problem through careful observation, methodical approach, and persistence. The fact that the problem involved alien parasites and the ruler of an interstellar civilization was just details. "Your people must be very proud of their practical nature," Queen Ashtar said. "In our civilization, such direct approaches are considered undignified." "There's nothing undignified about getting the job done," Marcus replied. "My grandfather used to say that the most elegant solution is the one that works, regardless of how it looks to other people." Wise words. Perhaps that is why humans have been so successful in your relatively short time among the stars. You are not bound by preconceptions about what methods are appropriate. Marcus had cleared nearly 3/4 of the contaminated area when the remaining organisms made their final desperate adaptation. Through the scanner, he could see them beginning to detach from the queen's skin on their own, attempting to relocate to areas he had not yet treated. "They're trying to run," he said with satisfaction. "That means they've given up on trying to develop resistance. Now it's just a matter of making sure we get them all." He increased his pace, chasing down the fleeing organisms and systematically eliminating them from each new position they attempted to establish. It was like a microscopic game of tag, except the consequences of missing even one could mean the death of a queen and the collapse of a civilization. "Toxin levels are now below critical thresholds," Kethral reported. The treatment has been successful. Marcus finished clearing the last visible cluster of organisms and sat back on his heels. That should be most of them, but we'll need to do a full body scan to make sure none escape to other areas. Already completed, Queen Ashtar said, checking her own scanner. The contamination has been eliminated. You have saved my life, Marcus Chen. Marcus looked down at the simple scrubbing brush in his hand, then back at the Queen of the Zephyrian Union. I just did what needed doing. Sometimes that's all it takes. But even as he said it, Marcus was beginning to realize that this incident would have consequences far beyond a single successful medical treatment. He had just demonstrated that human approaches to problem-solving could succeed where the most advanced alien civilizations failed. And judging by the look in Queen Ashtar's obsidian eyes, she was thinking along the same lines. Kethral, the Queen said, please prepare a comprehensive report on this treatment method. I want it distributed to all medical facilities in the Union, along with detailed information about human approaches to physical therapy. Yes, Your Majesty. And Marcus, she continued, I believe we need to discuss the broader implications of what has happened here. Your people may have capabilities that could benefit the entire galaxy, capabilities that have been overlooked because they appear too simple to be effective. Marcus set down the brush and stood up. I'm just a maintenance engineer. I fix things when they break. But if that's useful to you, I'm happy to help. Oh, it is useful, Queen Ashtar said with a smile that held promises and possibilities that Marcus was only beginning to understand. More useful than you can imagine. 3 hours later, Marcus found himself in what Queen Ashtar called the council chamber, though it looked more like the inside of a crystal cathedral than any meeting room he had ever seen. The walls curved up into impossible arches that seemed to support themselves through geometric principles that hurt his head to contemplate. Holographic displays floated in the air around a table that appeared to be carved from a single massive gemstone, showing real-time data from across the Zephyrian Union. The reports are already spreading through our communication networks, Queen Ashtar was saying to the assembled council members. Every medical facility in the Union is requesting details about the human treatment protocols. Marcus sat in a chair that had been specially configured for human proportions, still feeling slightly surreal about the entire situation. 6 hours ago, he had been a maintenance engineer tracking down an atmospheric glitch. Now he was sitting in on a meeting of one of the galaxy's most powerful governments, discussing the implications of his success in removing alien parasites with a scrubbing brush. With respect, Your Majesty, said one of the council members, a tall Zephyrian whose skin shifted between gold and copper. While we are grateful for the humans' assistance, this incident raises concerning questions about our medical capabilities. Indeed it does, Queen Ashtar agreed. It raises the question of why we have allowed our evolution toward refinement to blind us to the value of direct action. Another council member, this one with skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies, leaned forward. The galactic medical community will want to study these treatment methods. If the human approach proves effective against other resistant pathogens, it could revolutionize emergency medicine. Which brings us to the broader issue, Queen Ashtar said, turning her attention to Marcus. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what do you know about the current political situation in this sector of the galaxy? Marcus shifted in his chair. Not much, honestly. I usually focus on keeping life support systems running rather than politics. But I know there have been some territorial disputes between different species, and I've heard rumors about some kind of new threat that has everyone nervous. The hegemony, Queen Ashtar said, and Marcus noticed that several council members visibly tensed at the word. A coalition of species that believes the galaxy would be better served under unified rule. Their rule, specifically. They have been systematically conquering or absorbing smaller civilizations for the past 50 years. And they're heading this way? They are already here. 3 systems in our outer territories have gone silent in the past month. Our scouts report massive fleets moving through those regions, but we have been unable to determine their exact capabilities or intentions." Marcus frowned. "What does this have to do with me scrubbing alien parasites?" "Everything," said the golden-skinned council member. "The hegemony succeeds through superior technology and overwhelming force. They analyze their opponent's capabilities, then develop countermeasures that render those capabilities useless. It is the same principle as the organisms you eliminated. But they can't adapt to something they've never encountered before," Marcus said, beginning to understand. "Precisely. Human approaches to problem-solving are so fundamentally different from standard galactic methodologies that they represent a completely unknown variable. The hegemony's strategic computers cannot plan for tactics they cannot predict." Queen Ashtar activated one of the holographic displays, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red indicators marked the locations of hegemony fleets, while blue showed Zephyrian territory. The red was steadily advancing toward the blue. "Our military analysts estimate that we have perhaps 6 months before the hegemony reaches our core worlds. Our fleets are advanced, our weapons are sophisticated, and our tactics are refined through thousands of years of development. All of which means that the hegemony has probably already developed countermeasures for everything we can deploy against them." "But humans fight differently," Marcus said. "Humans fight like humans," Queen Ashtar agreed. "And more importantly, humans solve problems like humans. Direct, practical, adaptable, and completely unpredictable, by galactic standards." Marcus looked around the table at the assembled alien dignitaries, all watching him with expressions that seemed to mix hope with desperation. "You want humans to help you fight the hegemony." "We want to offer humanity a full military alliance," Queen Ashtar said formally. "The Zephyrian Union has technology, resources, and infrastructure that your species currently lacks. In exchange, we need human tactical thinking, human approaches to problem-solving, and human willingness to use whatever methods work, regardless of how they might appear to others." "I'm not a soldier or a diplomat," Marcus protested. "I fix air recyclers and gravity generators. And today you saved the life of a queen using methods that the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy could not accomplish," the galaxy-skinned council member pointed out. "Do you think that kind of practical innovation might be useful in other contexts?" Marcus thought about it. Throughout his career, he had regularly solved problems that stumped engineers from more advanced civilizations, usually by ignoring conventional approaches and focusing on what actually worked. Human engineering was often considered crude by galactic standards, but it was also remarkably effective. "You think human stubbornness might be the key to beating an enemy that adapts to everything they encounter," he said. "We think human creativity might be the key to winning a war that cannot be won through conventional means," Queen Ashtar corrected. "The hegemony expects their opponents to fight like civilized beings, using established protocols and accepted strategies. They do not expect opponents who will improvise solutions using whatever materials are available." "Like scrubbing brushes." "Like scrubbing brushes." Marcus stood up and walked to the holographic display, studying the advancing red markers. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Full technological partnership," Queen Ashtar said. "Human ships with Zephyrian weapons and shields. Human tactical flexibility combined with our industrial capacity. Joint training programs where human officers teach our military commanders how to think outside established parameters. And in return, humanity gains access to technology that will advance your civilization by centuries. Faster-than-light communication, advanced material science, medical technology that could extend human lifespans by thousands of years, plus protection from the hegemony, which will eventually reach human space whether we stop them here or not." Marcus turned back to face the council. "I'm not qualified to negotiate on behalf of my entire species. That's way above my pay grade. But you can carry our proposal back to your government. the golden-skinned council member said. And you can tell them what you accomplished here using simple human methodology. More importantly, Queen Ashtar added, you can tell them that sometimes the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy need help from people who understand that the simplest solution is often the correct one. Marcus looked down at his hands, still slightly wrinkled from the water in the bathing chamber. A few hours ago, these hands had saved the life of an alien queen using a scrubbing brush. Now that same queen was offering to change the course of human history. There's something else, Queen Ashtar said quietly. We would like you to remain as our liaison during the initial negotiations. Your demonstrated ability to solve problems that others cannot makes you uniquely valuable as a bridge between our species. You want me to become a diplomat? We want you to continue being exactly what you are, a human who sees problems clearly and solves them effectively. The galaxy needs more of that kind of thinking. Marcus walked back to his chair and sat down, his mind racing through the implications. If I agree to this, my life changes completely. I can't go back to fixing atmospheric recyclers and pretending this never happened. No, Queen Ashtar agreed. But you can help ensure that human children grow up in a galaxy where their practical nature is valued and protected rather than conquered and eliminated. And if the hegemony can't be stopped, then at least humanity will have every possible advantage when they come for you. Because they will come, Marcus. The hegemony does not tolerate independent civilizations, especially ones with unknown capabilities. Marcus thought about his crewmates back on the diplomatic vessel. Good people doing important work to keep humans safe in a galaxy that often seemed hostile to newcomers. He thought about the human colonies scattered across dozens of worlds, building new lives among the stars through determination and ingenuity. And he thought about what would happen to all of that if a force like the hegemony decided that humanity was a threat to be eliminated. All right, he said finally. I'll carry your proposal to Earth, and I'll recommend that we take it seriously. Thank you, Queen Ashtar said, and Marcus could hear genuine relief in her voice. But I have some conditions. Name them. First, I want complete technical specifications for every piece of technology you're offering to share. My people don't enter into agreements they don't understand. Agreed. Second, I want to see your military capabilities firsthand. If we're going to be allies against this hegemony, I need to understand what we're working with. Also agreed. And third, I want to review all available intelligence on hegemony tactics and technology. If human thinking is really that different from galactic norms, I might be able to identify weaknesses that your analysts have missed. Queen Ashtar smiled, the expression transforming her alien features with warmth that seemed entirely human in its sincerity. All of your conditions are acceptable. In fact, they demonstrate exactly the kind of thorough, practical approach that makes humanity so valuable as potential allies. Marcus stood up again, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a familiar tool belt. Then I guess I'm not a maintenance engineer anymore. You are exactly what you have always been, Queen Ashtar corrected. You are someone who fixes things that are broken. You just happen to be working on bigger systems now. As Marcus looked around the crystal chamber at the alien dignitaries who were placing their civilization's hopes on human ingenuity, he realized that Queen Ashtar was right. He was still fundamentally the same person who had walked through the wrong door a few hours earlier. The only difference was the scale of the problems he was being asked to solve. Well, he said with a slight smile, I've always been good at improvising with whatever tools are available. I guess we'll find out if that skill scales up to interstellar warfare. I believe it will, Queen Ashtar said confidently. After all, you saved my life with a scrubbing brush. How much more difficult could saving the galaxy be? Marcus laughed despite himself. I probably shouldn't answer that question. No, Queen Ashtar agreed with a musical chuckle of her own. You probably should not. But I suspect that before this is over, we will all learn to appreciate the human talent for making the impossible seem routine. As the council session continued and the details of the proposed alliance took shape, Marcus found himself thinking that his grandfather would have been proud. The old man had always said that the key to success was showing up, paying attention, and being willing to do whatever needed doing, regardless of how it looked to other people. Today, Marcus had shown the galaxy that sometimes the person with the scrubbing brush was exactly the person you needed to solve problems that advanced technology couldn't handle. And tomorrow, he would help prove that human stubbornness and ingenuity might just be the weapons that could save civilization itself. It was, he reflected, turning out to be a much more interesting day than he had planned.